Another new debut, and I'm sure it'll be an exquisite one, from a, in my opinion, beautifully evolving first project. I know some of you would share in that regard as well, with The Dark Side of the Moon's Metamorphosis. That's just how I feel in reflection of the first 5 singles they've debuted in advance of what we're about to entertain together for the first time, all those tracks of which I've featured on this channel in the past. In terms of those first listens, maybe we've shared in the experience together, but we're going to do the same here for New Horizons. But I consider those tracks as individual contributions or as a group, and I'm just mesmerized by this picture that's being painted in front of me from what I'm sure will be a longtime favorite group, a supergroup, in fact, on behalf of The Dark Side of the Moon, which I knew going in they showed and I hope there's a long career ahead of this beyond just Metamorphosis, because what I'm hearing thus far, I mean, the last track we entertained, Legends Never Die, that cover was just exquisite, and all 4 as well of the other features. But I knew going in, as I said, this would be a promising artistic work to entertain, well, a presence really on this channel. I'm part of course, many of your recommendations, and I always love being supplied names. I really do work off those quite regularly, especially when it pertains to the European metal scene, and many of you know how treasured of a space that is for me. But also going in with a familiarity point, some of which, okay, so as I said, this is a super group and setting a baseline for any of you that The Dark Side of the Moon is a first approach by name. All 3 of the presences here, well, there's 4 members, but 2 of them come from the same group. It's a combination of talents from 3 different European groups, 3 distinct ones that I've either featured on the channel presently, one of which is evolving, and one is coming. I've already started coverage of them as well, but I just have to edit through and post. But I'm part of Ad Infinitum, Feuerschwangs, and Amaranth. 4 total members of this group coming from those efforts. I knew, as I said, promising destination on part of that convergence point, and what I've heard thus far with The Dark Side of the Moon in establishing their individualized and highly exquisite and captivating characterization of work with a bit of a unique flair. I would say a good mixture, again, on part of all 3 of those associated names. It's just been wonderful to entertain their art. You know, I love being able to showcase good music on this channel, especially in terms of good art. You can't always find that these days, but with music generally, you know, what I've spotlighted on this channel from any artist, there hasn't been one work I have not been elated by, at least in some regard. And The Dark Side of the Moon has just impressed me 5 entries in, so I'm sure the 6th will be wonderful. And it does kind of flow in the territory of other projects, from other efforts of theirs, and builds out, at least in some respects. Because, as I said, if you're not familiar, The Dark Side of the Moon's collection in terms of an album structure, from my understanding, there are 3 original pieces, but the bulk of the album is built up of covers, and the first 4 of what we've heard, including the last one, The Legends Never Die, have been wonderful. And there's been a presence on part of those collaborative covers. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The collaborative model, which many of you know I love in terms of being able to gauge new talents. And we're going to get another opportunity here. Maybe we're going to share that experience together, perhaps, or some of you already know the artist coming in on behalf of Fabienne Erni. Like I said, this is a bit of a presence with the cover specifically on this album, at least when I think of the previous singles, the Double Trouble cover or the May It Be cover with, in respective order, Brisanda Panfili or Charlotte Wessels. We have Fabienne Erni from Odysee, who's been a name that's also been thrown my way as well, and I'll probably get to them eventually. I've noted them before, and it made sense, I guess, she's a Swiss artist as well, if I'm going to give you the complete regard. I did look up some background information. And a harpist as well. So this is a second harpist I can add to my playlist alongside Jenny Deal, which is really interesting. Again, I've never really engaged with many harp players, but it's quite beautiful, especially with the way Dark Side of the Moon, like I said, individual presence with them, but the way that they utilize the harp and blend it into such a unique metal style, whether it be a softer elegance or a more boisterous sound, it's just wonderful. I'm a big fan of The Dark Side of the Moon in all ranges of what they offer in terms of sound quality and vision. I love being able to gauge new talents with you, though, as well. So Fabienne Erni, I'm sure, will delight. And it made sense, again, like I said, I guess, for the 2 to converge on part of, in some respect, with the vocal talents, Melissa Bonney and Fabienne, in that if you consider very recently with Ad Infinitum, their latest unveiling, Chapter 3, Kriegel Glanzmann, also from Odysee, made an appearance there on the concluding track. So there's a lot of connections here, it seems, to Ad Infinitum more specifically, but I'm just happy with more Dark Side of the Moon. I can't wait to engage with it in terms of this being the fanfare track, in part with more Metamorphosis unveiling, and for me, based on time zone, in a couple hours, but for most of you, I'm sure tomorrow, technically. And don't be surprised, by the way, I'm giving this some thought. I mean, there's a couple tracks, at least from what I'm considering in the lineup, that I'd love to be able to engage with you in terms of first-time listen. I don't know how many, but keep your eyes peeled if you want to hear some more of my thoughts on the album upon its release date, maybe soon after. I'll try to get those videos up quickly if I can, once I narrow down what I'm going to be covering. Maybe not narrow at all. You'll see. Just keep your eyes peeled. But we might spend some more time in the future with The Dark Side of the Moon, because they've been a delight to entertain and feature perhaps for those of you that are getting the first introduction. That is part of a goal in why I'm showcasing music, not just to spotlight a vital art form in my life and my concentration, but of what's been so exquisite to me, at least in my past and in the world today, but to showcase artists that perhaps this will be a first introduction for you. And so you'll have the same path of elation that I've experienced 5 works in with The Dark Side of the Moon. I know many of you share in that experience, though I am considerably, based on time frame of those releases, I know I'm a bit younger in my days. They are relatively fresh appearance here, but they've been wonderful. Like I said, the European talent space is just boundless, and The Dark Side of the Moon is the newest one we're happening on together, perhaps in a grander share, but I've had a wonderful time. Let's share in the experience together with New Horizons. And by the way, I don't think I regarded this. It is another one of their original pieces. So there's a couple on this album to stand alongside not just the covers, but in this case, it's the second single following The Gates of Time. That one's so good. To have an original vision. At least from my understanding, it's not a cover. I might be wrong on that, but I tried to do some perusing. I didn't think there was a connection, at least on a cover front. So feel free to crack down below if I'm wrong, but let's engage with it together for the first time through the video that accompanied as well to signal the fanfare, I guess, to the greatest extent. And if you're not familiar with my coverage and how I format my music features here, I do try and accommodate listener taste to the best extent I can. So if you want to read along with the narrative of the piece, that will be provided to you. You'll see the lyrics pop up in the video in just a second once the video, or the music video we're about to entertain engages. Oh, you start on the sentimental harp direction, especially with soft emphasis.
Have seen the shadows of our paradise.
The higher tones. I love the dominance of the harp here, and the atmosphere to it with the visual is beautiful.
Perish when I realized all my tears.
And a 3/4 rhythm, I love that. Has like a waltz direction.
All my dreams collide, but now I know my destiny. I will stay so far
Good increase on scale.
away until the day I look at the sky and I see the angels cry.
That hold and the variants, they're beautiful. Right, here goes Fabienne. That lower foundation to her voice where the accent intrudes. Just possessing. It's so beautiful. Nice vibration. Great mix. Especially to complement between different measures, Melissa. It's a beautiful balance. This is the softest work of theirs, I think, to stand alongside May It Be. What an exquisite personality here. love the key change here. But I was waiting for that overlap. Solid pairing again, especially on that wavering when you join up both. That is such a sweet number. Wonderful feeling you leave with, especially on that conclusion. And to let it linger on the lit up harp. Talk about a showcase. Isn't that beautiful? You know, I listened to that piece and it has a lot of shades, in fact, when I consider what we've heard thus far from The Dark Side of the Moon. I gave regard to the May It Be cover. I'm part of Charlotte Wessels. It is the at first I was like, well, maybe that song's softer. I think by comparison, if I consider every dynamic of the pieces in construction, that is the rougher one, because that had some. Because many of you are familiarized to Melissa Bonney, you know again how qualified her range is in terms of the extent of where she can go with her voice. If it's more of a scream or it has a more melodic flair. This one is definitely, I would say, the softest, but it still has that segue, the permitted one, for a more dominant emphasis, at least in part. Its intrusion, though, with the harp showcase and the outro as well, it's a wonderful bookending for the construction of the piece and the way it's formatted. So engaging. Again, I've not listened to much harp music in my life, especially in the metal scene. I love the unexpected nature of what you find so often. If you compare, for example, and we have some variety as well, I'm sure, geographically speaking, it's in many different countries, but when I consider like American mainstream metal, what more people are familiarized to, I've always tended to look more into the alternative, especially of groups that make, whether they be maybe lower in name prominence, and some, as well, that have great regard, but ones that offer specific signature trials, even perhaps, of certain elements you might see seldom used. I love seeing differentiation when it adds this uniqueness in feeling and on experience. And I've not really seen too much harp music or harp tones utilized in the metal scene before. In some cases, yes, specifically of Europe, which is why I've said many times, is the characterization and part of their talent library from whatever country it might be just has floored me. The construction with the structure here, the 3/4 time, I love it. It really does feel like a bit of a waltz number of more of an emphasized scale. It's just that harp lingers, and the visual was just I love the curtain effect, especially with the lighting changes. That worked. Even the dress choice on part of, again, like I would say the duality. I love dual presences, especially on these works. And this is why I consider, again, May It Be explicitly, because I loved the points of isolation and overlap. And I love how they saved up for the end, even though I like the disjoint between May It Be and this track on behalf of, you heard the vocal overlapping structured differently. We had to wait with this piece, right? It starts out with Melissa, who's got a beautiful voice, and then it roots into Fabienne. I love seeing, by the way, that there's different flares of accents in specific countries. Like I said, both, from my understanding, Melissa and Fabienne are Swiss artists, or Swiss vocalists. Their accents are so different. Fabienne's range, that foundation to her voice, the deeper presence when you can hear the vibrations more emphasized, especially when she's given more of a prominence. And I'm assuming with the choruses earlier on, there is an overlap, but I think it's with just each vocalist on their own. I don't think it was between, or if it was, at least the lyric website I'm looking at, they separate it. They differentiate, who was singing in which role, but it sounds to me like it's the same artist, and one was just maybe lesser in volume, and that was the overlap to kind of save up, I guess, as a presence, the alternative. And then for the conclusion of the piece to be centered around that final overlap, but you can potently tell again, there's that mixture with a key change. Wonderful idea. That's one of my favorite pieces on the album. And it is, as I've said many times, I do gravitate naturally to the harder metal side, though I do keep an open door, as many of you know, because I think there's talent, broadly speaking. And even in that work with a diversified capacity, and many of you would regard, I'm sure, with metal tastes, music is like general entertainment. It can be a subjective experience on behalf of the viewer, of a listener. So there are certain preferences, even in the metal territory, softer or harsher energy. The atmosphere to it, the scale, I just love the vitality of this number. It just, it's so different. It feels very similar to May It Be in a collaborative work, especially with the vocal layering, though it matches a different pattern. It has a more unique timing. The harp intrusion it's as signature there. It is. It's just used differently. It's not fair to say. Both May It Be on this one are very similar, but there are specific points of differentiation to each other's works, and what they offer is so charming. The initial key choice, the balance with this piece, just the overall feel of it, sweeps you away, as really any track from Europe does. Not much of a shift there. If there's any feeling of unity to anything, it is that general presence is so streamlined with works I found in that territory, but I love The Dark Side of the Moon. Their vision has really impressed me. And again, with collaboration, sometimes you never know, right? It could be a mixed idea. You're like, oh, I would love to hear this, but then maybe you hear it and it's not necessarily as wondrous as you envisioned. In this case with the channel, I've considered a lot of collaborative works and covers too in that space as well with vocal collaborations, and as I said, all have fared well. But I would acknowledge that there maybe are, separative points in, the general music world. Everything I've heard thus far with The Dark Side of the Moon on part of collaborative talents invading. I love getting first introductions, whether it be Charlotte Wessels or Brisanda Panfili, and now Fabienne Erni, who I will at some point have to highlight. Illuvity. Again, they've been a name that's been floated around for a while. I do keep them on a general list, as I do all the artists that you provide me in name, or ones I stumble upon as well in association, but I'd love to hear more. The personality on behalf of both vocalists and the points of separation that differentiate one from another, especially when that overlay comes in, that really takes my attention. It's just beautiful. I love the effect that European music offers. Oh, really good music generally, but this group has just been such a fun, collaborative work to entertain, especially on behalf of maybe engaging with new first-time listeners. And I hope for some of you that is the dynamic you approach. I know many of you are longtime fans, and I, of course, welcome you here. And I love the back and forth exchanges that we have, of course, in regards to our song. And I'm sure the songs I feature here, and I'm sure that with New Horizons, it will be no different. But I really do hope that some of you are getting the first engagement. If so, look back on their library. You'll thank me, as well as anybody that's recommended their name to me as well. If it hadn't, I probably would have gotten to them eventually in terms of the points of connection with the groups, and that I've associated coverage of their other work on this channel, or that's up and coming. So maybe down the line I would have come across them, but of course your recommendations fasten the pace up a bit in approachability, because I know you wanted me to spotlight this group. Again, you've been asking for a little while, and I'm glad I did. I'm really grateful that I did. And I hope, again, for those of you this is the first introduction, that you loved it as much as I did. I'd love to hear about that down below, as well as your point of angle, as I said, if you wish to disclose that, of course. I can't wait to hear more from them. Again, this is heralding the album's unveiling tomorrow for many of you. For me, a couple of hours, because I'm in one space, though I don't necessarily speak that highly of where I live. In terms of states, I will qualify that it's great because of the advantage I get in time zones. So, I'm going to get this movie early, technically tonight. So, of course, I'm game going in. I just don't know yet how much I'm going to be spotlighting in total. I have to narrow that down, or maybe, as I said, not. Keep your eyes peeled, though. there's at least a couple more tracks I'm going to be featuring with the Dark Side of the Moon. If not, maybe more. Of course, the doorway's always open for the future. I can't wait to hear more. And as I said, I do hope there's a long career ahead. I mean, there certainly is for each individual member a part of their own associated groups, but this collaborative work has just bamboozled me with its vision, its joy, the elation, the feelings that I crave with music. I always find with them, and I hope you do too. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.